Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Wednesday version of Harmonize, 2Energize. My name is Terry Matthews. I work remotely on behalf of the Mary Burmeister Jin Shin Jyutsu Institute. The Mary Burmeister Jin Shin Jyutsu Institute is the source of authentic Jin Shin Jyutsu. What is Jin Shin Jyutsu? For those of you that have only just heard the name, come across it, and may be visiting here for the first time, Jin Shin Jyutsu is an art of harmonizing what could be said to be the life energy, chi or ki, as it moves or not through the body. And in Jin Shin Jyutsu, we do that by placing our hands, palm side down, back side up, on 26 safety energy locks left and right of the spine. By doing that, we induce energy to move more congruently to harmonize any blockages in our soul, heart, mind, and body. However, it must be said that Jin Shin Jyutsu is not a substitute for medical treatment. It is a complement. We have a website. And here it is. www.jsjinc.net. If you go there, you'll find all the information that you need. If you don't, you can contact the head office, 480-998-9331, and find out more. But here on the home page, we have listings of all the current upcoming classes, which are in the main at the moment online due to COVID restrictions. Coming up this Saturday, we have Back to the Breath for a healthy, happy back. And you register here. All the information is there. There's a 5-day basic seminar, which has actually started today, with Sarah Harper, and you can go and sign up for that and join it. Here's your links, here's your information. And then coming up, February 5th and 6th, is Reversing and Increasing the Depths with Waltraud Reger-Krauser. This is a kind of class where if you've done at least one 5-day class, it would make more sense. Then if you've ever missed any of our offerings, you can go here, connect to any of these links and find out more. Oftentimes, people ask me, where to start with Jin Shin Jyutsu. And the reality is, wherever you are. But in terms of classes and courses, you could benefit by beginning with a 5-day self-help class, 2-day self-help class, or a core principles class. And if you go back to the website, www.jsjinc.net, you could also find links to those classes. So I see a note here in the chat that the video is very blurry. Is that still the case? Give me a indication if that's true or false. Or maybe it was true for someone, but not for everyone. Everything good? I'm not hearing anything. I'm not seeing anything. So I'm assuming we're all good. No idea why it should be blurry. We never know, though, do we? Things happen, the gremlins. Let's see if I switch something here, whether it makes any difference. Well, the only thing I can suggest, folks, is I will reload the page and see if that makes any difference. Hang on in. There you are, you see. One little reload and on with the show. Today, this is the Wednesday version, and this is the storytelling time. We don't actually have a special guest today, so guess what? You get me. And tomorrow, the 27th of January, will be 14 years since our founder, Mary Burmeister, transitioned. And it's interesting that things should get blurry when I decide to talk about Mary. We're talking about her spirit, perhaps. So, without further ado, let's talk about Mary Burmeister, the founder of Jin Shin Jyutsu, and how I first met her, how I interacted. So when I met Mary, she looked similar to this picture here. And this was in 1990. And I had the opportunity of receiving my very first treatment from her that year. I was visiting a friend, and she gave up her appointment so that I could actually experience the hands of Mary Burmeister. And no doubt some of you have heard over the years, Mary just said no need for pressure or anything else. Well, my experience was the opposite. I shall never forget, I walked into the office. She greeted me. She placed her hands in the prayer position. And she greeted me and she guided me into the treatment room. And I lay down on the bed, on the massage table. I don't think it was a typical massage table, but it was one of our tables. And Mary read my pulses on the wrist, and she wandered down to my feet, to my ankles, where safety energy locks 5 and 16 live. And she said, lots of history. Safety energy lock 5, there it is, at the corner there of the ankle, just underneath the ankle bone, actually. It often represents the human condition. It's the safety energy lock, which several meridians pass through, particularly the regeneration flows, kidney, liver, spleen. And it came into the universe meaning putting off the old and putting on the new. Well, I think I was going through those kinds of transitions at the time. But I can tell you this, nothing could have geared me for the experience that followed when Mary placed her hands on my 5s and then my 16s. And there's the 16 on the outside ankle. And it came into the universe meaning the basis of all human activities again, breaking down existing forms for new ones. This safety energy lock sits in the slipstream of various flows, particularly bladder, which is the partner of kidney flow, and gallbladder, and various other flows from textbook 1, for those of you that are familiar. Anyway, Mary just placed her hands on those 2 energy locks on either side of the ankles, and all of a sudden, I don't remember anything. I can tell you 7 hours later, I was still totally laid on my back in room 1 in what was the Jin Shin Jyutsu office in Scottsdale, in Arizona. They let me sleep the whole day, literally, because Mary's gentle hands, or not so gentle, I might add, there was sign where her pressure had shown itself. Those little marks on my skin had opened up the energy field for me to receive a release of tensions in those particular areas. Boy, oh boy, that was an incredible experience. I never actually got a chance to talk to Mary about that experience because A, I was asleep and she carried on with seeing other clients, and B, I carried on being asleep as my friend took me back to her place. I was put to bed and I didn't wake up for another 9 or 10 hours. And all I could say was, well, that was just the best sleep I've ever had in my life. And I definitely felt very calm and very centered. And I chatted to my friend about it, and she talked to me about, all disharmony, Mary would say, would start in the feet, and then everything would move up. But those particular energy locks are part of what the teachers sometimes call the janitor flows, the first or fourth depth flows going through there, and the regeneration flows. So obviously I needed to sleep. I must say I was quite tired. Believe it or not, at that time I'd taken a holiday job, hod carrying in England. And for those of you that are familiar, a hod is something that you put bricks in and you put it on your shoulders. And in my case, I had to run up a ladder onto scaffolding to hand the bricks to bricklayers. Yeah, I can't remember why I took that particular job. I think I was maybe between a college course and I needed some extra money or something. But anyway, it was exhausting. I mean, my shoulders really hurt a lot and my wrists. And gosh, I just had to move like fast up a ladder and down again. But after that treatment with Mary, I was so much more calmer, stiller, relaxed, and energized. And for myself, I used that 5 and 16 in other treatments as I became involved as a practitioner at the Scottsdale office. I actually used it when I was working with a young lad who had special needs. And in that particular session, he was very active. I mean, I worked with special needs, or in England they would call learning disabilities, before I got more involved with Jin Shin Jyutsu. And, the children and adults, their energy can be, a little out of harmony. And this young lad was no exception. And to get him to actually stay on the table was a real feat of his mother and me using whatever bribes we could. But when I did eventually get him on the table, ching, I went into his ankles, the 5 and 16. And boy, like a cat, he knew what I was doing. Do you find if you're working with animals, particularly cats, like children, they know when enough is enough and they pretty much know what you're doing and they wriggle. And this boy was no exception. He wriggled. But I didn't want to dig my nails in. I didn't want to do a pressure on him. I just was gently easing in there. And his mother I asked her to hold his shoulders, 11s and 22s, and or the center 13 to help calm him. And I think between the pair of us, I think it helped his mother being there. I mean, I think he felt more safe. But eventually, with the pressure on his ankles and the gentle touch of his mother, boom. Well, center 13, the kidney and heart pathways go through there, and then the 5 and 16, bladder, or kidney and bladder. So between myself and his mother, we had actually soothed him. The calming waters of the fourth depth, kidney and bladder, finally released. I think we knocked him out for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then he looked up, he rolled his eyes, and he said, "Can I go now?" And we let him go. But it's also known that the 5 and 16 can relieve pain. It can be seen as an anesthetic. So whenever you're in situations where people are restless or they're in pain, hold the 5s and 16s. You can hold them crossing your hands like this, which affects the mediator pathway, or you can hold them one at a time either side, which affects the supervisor. So experiment, my friends. I had one more treatment with Mary, and that was at my second visit, which was 6 months later. And in between that time, Mary had her fall. And those of you that may be familiar with what happened there, sufficient to say that it didn't stop her treating, but somehow things were different. And maybe because I was different, I experienced the treatment differently. I certainly didn't sleep for 7 hours. She knocked me out. The claw, someone would call her. She definitely knocked me out. I can't remember what she did then either. I remember the 5 and 16 from before, but I've no idea what she did overall the second time. But it was different. And I got up within half an hour of the treatment and I was bouncing around. So that was fascinating. Then later on, I got the opportunity, as some of you know, to work at the Scottsdale office as a practitioner myself. And there was a time close to, I think it was 2007 or maybe even 2008, the year in which Mary transitioned, where David Burmeister asked me to support his mum from time to time to go in and experience treatments with her and support her, because Mary had reached a point where her energy was still as strong, but she tended not to do a complete flow. I don't doubt that she never did a complete flow as people understood it from the textbooks, because Mary was a master at her game. She'd reached the intuitive peak. She knew. And I also was told that Jiro Marai, who taught her, knew that she was highly clairvoyant, that she could actually see the energy and she could see where it was blocked. And hence the term came, Mary can bullseye. Well, yes, she could. But anyway, she, over the years after her fall, she tended not to do the complete flow. People would come to the office still to see her, and she would still treat. And they would say that it wasn't the same, but it was the same, if you see what I mean. The power, the frequency, the energy was still there, but the movement wasn't. I mean, if they were awake enough to see what Mary did. So anyway, on one occasion, I went into a treatment room with Mary, and I read the pulses. Mary was already sitting there waiting, as it were. She placed her hand, I think, on the lady's shoulder, and I think maybe on her 15s as well. So it was 11 and 15 or similar, or maybe it was 19 and 15, I don't know. Either way, Mary had decided what she was going to do, and all I had to do was decide what I wanted to do. And I must tell you, I was feeling quite intimidated. This was the first time I'd actually sat with Mary giving a treatment with someone else, and I felt I was under the gaze, as it were. And Mary always had this delightful smile, and today was no exception. She just smiled at me, and I'm like, oh, well, here goes. Read the pulses. And I thought it was a good idea to do the spleen flow, which looks something like this. For those of you that are not familiar, let's get down to the slides again. There it is, spleen flow. And those of you that are familiar with Self-Help Book 1 will know that Mary circled a couple of the safety energy locks with the cross inside, and the rest just left the cross. And the reason for that was it's quite a long reach to get to, there we go, number 5 here. And she also knew where the spleen flow went. And she gave us the option of starting the spleen flow either one hand here and one hand on the coccyx, or one hand there, one hand on the coccyx, or one hand there. I mean, sometimes folks worry about, should I start at the beginning of a flow and go right to the end? No. Sometimes the pathway is clear at certain levels, and you can find that out by just placing your hand on the energy lock, and you'll know whether the energy is moving or not. And sometimes you can go ahead of the first safety energy lock, or even before it, and you'll say, well, in this case, where would I go? Because the first safety energy lock was here. Well, actually, spleen flow begins here, so you could go there. So knowing where the flow goes, reading your textbook too, is very handy, because you get a complete picture and you can improvise. Anyway, coming back to that day with Mary, I don't know whether it was improvising or just fooling around, but have you ever had those days where you've not really followed anything and you're wondering what the heck is going on anymore? Well, that's exactly what happened for me. That day with Mary, I hadn't a clue what I was doing, really. And I'm sure Mary knew at some level. And I just said to her, Mary, I think I've done this back to front. And she just smiled. And the person receiving just smiled and said, it's fine. Fact is, even if you did a spleen flow in a different order from what it was written, it would just take the energy a little bit longer to get where it needed to go, all right? So never panic or worry. And that also is true of where you place your hand. If Jerome or I told you to place your right hand on the safety energy lock 1 on the knee and the left hand on the pube or on the coccyx, and you reversed hands, no worries. It just takes a little longer to get to its goal. And as a beginner, which you might be, those things happen. So just breathe out, drop your shoulders, smile, and let it happen. So time passes, and we come to 2008, and 3 days before Mary passed. This was the Mary that let's change this slightly. There's the settings. This was the Mary that I knew most of all when I came to the Jin Shin Jyutsu office to work. This is the picture that resembles her most. It's a beautiful picture. There she is with the red rose and pink roses behind her. And, it's funny, I didn't do this deliberately, but my mother's name is Rose, and we just had her funeral this last Tuesday, and this reminded me of the energy that I was around when Mary was going through her transitional process in 2008. And it was 2 or 3 days before she transitioned. Jody, who many of you may have met or heard when you phoned the Jin Shin Jyutsu office or you came for a course, had gone to see Mary. And, there was every indication that Mary had decided that she wanted to transition. And so Jody took it on herself to call various members of the staff. And on 2 or 3 days before Mary's transition, the phone rang, and I picked it up, and it was Jody. And I don't remember her exact words, but she said, "Oh, someone would like to speak to you." And I said, "Oh, well, who's that?" And she said, "Oh, who do you think?" Or words to that effect. It was Mary. And I can tell you, and I feel that quality of energy now. I heard Mary say, "Hello, Terry. How are you?" And I said, "Mary, I'm fine. How are you?" And of course, I knew that the possibility that Mary was going to leave us shortly. And I have to say my voice was trembling and I could hardly say anything coherent. And I said, "Are you okay, Mary?" And she said, Yes, she said, and you know it's always going to be fine, don't you? And I said, I'm not sure what you mean, Mary. And she said, oh, you do. You've been there. Now, I might not have spoken about this much before, but I did have what they call a near-death experience several years before, after I died in a car accident. And I had the experience of leaving my body. And all I can say was that I knew that I was still me, but I was my soul. I was this light being. So I kind of got it then that Mary kind of was indicating that I knew that everything was going to be okay. Of course, I never turned around and said that to her. I never said, oh, well, you're remembering when I left my body, etc. I was more a blubbering mess at that point, because I did realize that maybe this was Mary saying goodbye, or in my understanding, au revoir. And it was very painful at that point. And I don't remember if I had dry eyes. I don't think I did. But anyway, this lady, this master, is the mother of Jin Shin Jyutsu. And you could say, always the mother, always with us. She gave so much. And I honor her for everything that she gave. And during this transitional time, when the office is no longer at that address where I first met Mary, it's time to maybe reflect on transitions and change and creativity, but also remember to be here now. And there are many, many quotes that Mary made over the years, and there's the What Mary Says book, and some of you may have that. It's always interesting to read some of her quotes. Some of them were not her originals, but she wrote them so that we would understand different aspects of Jin Shin Jyutsu. But one quote, which I'm going to read from the main central, number 60, the spring of 2008, the commemoration of Mary. Mary would always say after a treatment things, thank you, God. And this quote really, to me, captures perhaps where Mary is now, or where she was at that point of leaving us. And here it is. Thank you, and in unconditional cosmic love, I leave you physically, and I am with you all eternally as one. May each of one of you discover the teacher within and be the fun. And those of you that know that she was very good at acronyms, FUN stood for freedom, understanding, and no thing. So God bless you, Mary. I will always remember you affectionately. Your sun never really sets. You can see the reflection of the sun here through the water. I mean, Mary was born in America, of Japanese and American lineage, but I thought I would share this image, which is very familiar to the Orient, the sun, but also the spirals around. Jin Shin Jyutsu is a spiral energy. It's an infinite energy which spirals with no beginning and no end. And I'm sure Mary is on that continuing spiral, that journey continuing. Her work will live on forever. As I said at the beginning, the Mary Burmeister Jin Shin Jyutsu Institute is the authentic source of Jin Shin Jyutsu. This is where all the knowledge of Jin Shin Jyutsu was collated and shared, thanks to Mary, and before her, Jiro Marai, and to also to an extent, Haruki Kato, and now his son, Sadaki. So, Anyway, let's just have a quiet moment here. You're going to hold your thumb or little finger or whichever you choose, or just place your hands in your 15s, which is in the groin, which opens up the heart, or give yourself a hug, which covers the whole heart center. And maybe if you didn't even know Mary personally, I hope I've given you a little bit of a glimpse to the qualities of this beautiful soul, this beautiful spirit who gave us and continues to give us so much, who I honor and respect, and I know many of you do. So let's just pause and let's just breathe out, drop our shoulders, and just allow the energy of the cosmos to enter us, that cosmic unconditional love which Mary spoke of. Freedom, understanding, no thing. And if we feel drawn, look into your heart, connect to your heart, and maybe just say, well, you can say what you feel. I will say, thank you, Mary. Thank you, thank you. A million times, thank you. She lives on within Jin Shin Jyutsu. Her spirit will always be with us. And from my experience, my friends, that is truth. We were never born, and we never actually die. Death is a rather harsh word, I think. We transform. We keep moving through in this spiral of beautiful light, with no beginning, no end, on the journey of unconditional cosmic love. The journey continues. So thank you, everybody. This was, is, and shall be remembered as the Wednesday version without a guest physically, but with a guest spiritually, Mary Burmeister. And those of you that follow Harmonize to Energize, I will be back on Friday. And I just want to drop a thought to you all, especially those of you that have been coming for a long time. We are beginning to consider the possibility of extending the time of Harmonize to Energize. It's normally only about 30 minutes, although I tend to go a little bit longer, to 40 minutes on a Friday. And there may in the future be a small fee. And I hope that will not act as a deterrent to people. With the comments that I receive, I think a lot of you gain a lot from this short period of time. And what we're thinking is we'll open up the possibility for people to ask questions in the extra 10 minutes. And we've got other thoughts that are bubbling under. So let me know. You can email me info@jsjinc.com if that is something that you would support or any ideas you may have. And as I say, it may then just be one Harmonize to Energize on a Friday, and we may alternate between stories and practices, or it may just be practices. And we may have guests with the instructors as we've had before, or other practitioners. So I leave you with that at this transitional time. It's all about change, right? So let's all breathe out and naturally inhale and see what the future may bring. So take care. Thank you. I appreciate your support, and I so appreciate Mary B. And I look forward to the possibility of, let's go back. Tomorrow is the day, 14th anniversary. I look forward to the possibility that you all can feel the wonder and the connection with Mary whenever, not just tomorrow. And remember what a wonderful gift she gave us. So thank you, everybody. I will see you, those of you, on Friday, and I look forward to that. Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, cheerio.